Hey everybody, Mike Hawthorne here, artist on Deadpool and Spider-Man, and we are going to draw some Deadpool. So we're going to focus mostly on the head and shoulders, just to talk a little bit about my approach for uh, how I like to draw this guy. So I'm going to do a 3/4 view. I'm going to try to simplify this a little bit so we can get a sense of how I'm building this thing. So I'm going to draw real basic block form so you get a sense of what I'm going to go for with this guy. So there's going to be a definite top, front, and side view to the head. And I want to have a center line that I'm going to build everything on. Okay? So there's some basic rules for figuring out proportions on the figure and the head. So one of them is that roughly halfway from the top to the bottom is where you place the brow on the head. And the eyes in this case. And even though Deadpool has a mask on, I try to think about what the face and the head looks like underneath there. For me, it helps me think about his expressions. So if I take this section of the head now and sort of cut that in half, I can give myself an idea where the nose would be. And if I take that section and cut that in half, that's going to give me a rough idea of where I'm going to place the mouth. It's not an exact science, but it'll give me a sense of where I'm going to put rough facial features, and the fact that we're not going to see his facial features are kind of irrelevant. I want to have a sense of what's underneath there before I put the mask on him. I think that's important for giving his expressions a sense of believability. So I'm just kind of building the head roughly around that box form that I had. I'm using that line for where I'm going to roughly put the eyes. I'm going to make sure to line them up so it doesn't look like you have, floating eyes that don't match. Deadpool looks weird enough as it is. We don't want to mess up his eyes on top of it. So you want to think of this form as pretty rounded. And the reason this is going to be important is for when we're drawing the rest of the mask on his head. But for now, I'm going to focus on just the structure underneath. So you have these two muscles that kind of come up the side of the neck. And then the back of the neck that goes into the shoulders here. I'm going to sort of stick in those collarbones just to give myself a sense of where the shoulders are. You can kind of think of them as like a bicycle handle at the top of the chest. So far, so good. All right, so let's start building his mask on here. So I'm going to hint at some of the stuff that's going on underneath when I draw the mask on his face. And I want to try to match these up, the eye markings on his mask. And I still think of the brow underneath there. So you'll see that I have this line, I'm sort of matching up the tops of those marks, of these eye hole things on his mask. And I want to now draw a line across to sort of match up the other one. So I'm going to kind of have him smirking a little bit. And the nice thing with Deadpool is you can sort of hint at the goofiness going on underneath his mask. So I'm going to hint at his ear. The rule of thumb is usually the bottom of the nose and the brow are as big as the ear. We don't necessarily need that rule right now because we can't see his ear, but it'll at least give me a sense of where the bottom of the ear is. I'm just going to do some hatching just to kind of hint at it. Hatching is when you have, you know, these lines for shading, and cross hatching, you kind of bring them across in the other direction. And you'll see I hinted at the nose under there. Put some hatching underneath just to get a sense of there being a nose there in the first place. So I'm going to get rid of some of these construction lines. Now remember we talked about that center line up the head, and I'm going to use that to place his little, that nub on the back of his mask. That's sort of his little, to me it's sort of like Batman's horn. Every artist draws it a little different. Some guys play it, you know, for laughs and make it really exaggerated big. I tend to tone it down a little bit. So I'm using an HB pencil. HB is a nice sort of middle range pencil. It's a number 2, like probably what you use in school. And I'm going to use a kneaded eraser just to sort of knock down some of those construction lines that we had as I tighten up the drawing. Alright, so let's establish that neck. And I'm going to then put these, the part of the harness that holds his swords up. So just like we did up here where we have these kind of, whenever you have symmetrical things on the figure, you can use light construction lines to line them up. So I'm going to do that here just to make sure I have the harnesses lined up in the right places on both sides. And sort of a two-piece where one is a thinner strap, and then I tend to use a little simple buckle, and then I'll draw in the seam. Just add a little detail, make it a little believable, a little more believable. We're not necessarily going for realism as much as believability with comics, right? So let's get rid of this here. Alright, I want to make that a little bigger. Okay, so he's got a mask on, and with the Deadpool uniform, he has kind of a buckle thing here on his neck. Here we go. And then, just like we did here, right, we're going to continue that construction line across to the chest. And then he has these lines that go down the front of his chest that separate the black area of the uniform from the red, and there are these kind of buckles here. I tend to simplify the form just because when you got to draw dozens of pages, you need sort of a shorthand for drawing these quickly. Let's draw the other strap here on this side. Again, I'm going to do a simplified buckle. I need a sword. So I tend to think of the swords as starting from this rounded shape, and then a smaller round shape that the handle of the sword comes out of. So we're running out of paper. I can't quite draw the entire sword for you guys, but that's okay because we're just trying to focus on the construction of the head and shoulders. Alright, so I'm going to draw the seams here on the side of his mask. I kind of like drawing them coming right up the side. Every so often you'll see someone do a seam up the middle. It's up to you. I just personally like it here. And so we're going to talk a little bit about shading on the face. I'm going to imagine, like, let's pretend the light source is coming from there. See my happy little sun? We'll make him a Deadpool sun. There you go. Okay, so it's going to cast light on this side of his face, which means this side will be dark, this side will be light. And I'm going to treat the mask as if you can see the brow underneath it. So you would have shadow underneath this part of the brow, underneath this eyelid. You'd have a hint of the cheekbone, casting a shadow on that part of the mask. And I tend to leave this little white area here to hint at the brow. It allows for more expression when you're drawing your face. So I'm going to draw the side. So we established that nose was here, even though we sort of erased it out. But I know it's there, so I'm going to put a shadow on this part of the mask. Let's get a sharper pencil. Might even do a little hatching here. Just a hint at the nose. Hint at his brow there. And again, I want to hint at this side being in shadow because I established a light source on that side. There we go. I'm kind of hinting, I'll just put a little bit of shadow, a little bit of hatching here to hint at him smirking, just because I feel like Deadpool probably smirks a lot under his mask if he's not outright laughing. I feel like Deadpool is at least when we did the comic, I always felt like he was often laughing. So I'm going to sort of hint at the light coming in from this direction, casting a shadow on the farther part of the arm. There's a separating line between the red and the black area on the arm, so I'm going to drop that in, and then I'm going to add a little shadow to this part of the chest, stopping at this line because that's the section of his uniform that's red. So we'd have a little bit of a highlight here and a shadow where the rib cage would be underneath. Just a little hatching here. A little happy hatching. I like hatching. Just to add some shadows in the neck, build that form up. I'm going to clean this up a little bit, add the seams. Just a nice little level of detail that makes this more believable. Alright, so again, light's coming from this way, so most of this side of the body would be in shadow. Probably most of this side of the chest. So there you go. Very simple. We started with those basic forms. I'm going to erase this hatching. We started with those basic boxy kind of forms. Just if that helps you think of this thing three-dimensionally, then go for it. If you are more prone to draw kind of organically and you want to use rounded shapes, that's okay too. But what's nice about this is when you're shading the figure, you can think, well, the light source is coming from this side, so I got to make this side dark. So using those basic shapes to build more nuanced form is usually a good idea. So there you go. That's drawing Deadpool. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please stay safe out there. Talk to you guys later. This is Mike Hawthorne, artist for Marvel on Deadpool and Spider-Man. And peace.